Welcome everyone to our very first hip hop and R&B manager meetup. If you're new to us, we're the European Music Managers Alliance, or EMA for short. We are an umbrella organization for music manager trade organizations across Europe, and our events are part of our Empower program, which is funded by Creative Europe. Through research, advocacy, education, and networking, we're hoping to strengthen the position of managers across Europe. For more information on us, you can visit our website. I will drop the link in the chat. Today is our very first hip hop R&B manager meetup. We want to give managers across Europe an opportunity to learn from each other and network with one another. And we don't do this all by ourselves. We have a team of core managers that helps us on this and helped us with this one today. Some of them, I think, are here as well. I don't see everybody right now, but I want to give a big thank you to Wilhelmina, Mish, and Denise. They will be in breakout rooms later as well. Before we get to that, we are going to kick off with a chat with two incredible managers. We have Robert Swerdlow, who's the brains behind Starwood Management. He managed a stellar lineup of artists, including Manson, The Ordinary Boys, Little Sims, currently The Cooks, and also Michael Kiwanuka. And we're also joined by Carlyn Balder, who's the founder of Vibeout Limited, which specializes in artist and producer development and management. And she works with talents like Script Riley and Jack James. Welcome, Carlyn. Welcome, Robert. And thank you for taking the time out.
Yep.
Starting at the beginning, how did each of you get your start in artist management? Starting with Robert.
I completely fell into it. I was a music fan. I was at college, and every lunchtime I went to a coffee shop that was quite similar to Amsterdam. Everybody was smoking a lot of pot in Liverpool, and next to me was a gang of guys who kind of looked fucking super cool. And little did I know they were in a band, and we kind of like would nod at each other and wink each other. And after about like maybe 6 weeks of getting to know each other, they invited me to come and hang out with them, and I was intoxicated by their spirit and did so. And they were a kind of like very cool guitar band, and I had no idea that I was wanting to do music. I just took a big shine and loved what they were doing, and I helped them out because I could get my hands on a car and a photocopier and place to store some stuff, and I knew somebody who had a bar, and I knew somebody who had a rehearsal room, and before you knew it, I was becoming the semblance of a manager. That band were called the Lars. They were from Liverpool. They had a big hit way before everybody's time here, I would imagine, but a very important band who forged the way for kind of like what Britpop music became. And yeah, they were a very super cool band, and I learned by jumping in the deep end, and that's how I started.
Okay, what about you, Carolyn?
Same in a sense, fell into management, but I guess the story started when I was a teenager and I used to sing myself in Scotland, and I went through the motions of being an artist, and then my mum and dad were very working class, so they were always like, you need to go and get a real job as well as do this music thing. So my real job was working in an office, and I basically worked my way up from scanning paper every single day to reception to personal assistant, and then music was always there in the background as well. And then when I turned 23, I decided I needed to move to London because there wasn't much happening in Scotland, especially for someone that loved R&B. So I moved to London. My first job was actually being a personal assistant at CAA Sports to 10 football agents, which was a lot. And I didn't really like sports. I just liked Rangers and Ali McCoist being Scottish. So I kind of hinted to them, can I move to music? So then they put me into a job at CA Music as an assistant. Did that, then fast forward, I then got a job to be Guy Moot's executive assistant at Sony Publishing, which I loved. And that was when I really started to actually understand how the music business worked. And I met lots of managers, publishers, record label A&Rs. My strength and what I really loved to do was A&R. So I became an A&R as a publisher. Signed a bunch of stuff like Steph London, Mr. Easy, Kojo Funds, Young Ben, and worked heavily across Guy's roster, which was like one of the best rosters I could have dreamed of working on, to be honest. And then this guy came in called Scribs Riley, who was signed there at the time, and one of the other A&Rs knew that I was interested in management, because I'm the kind of person that just wants to learn a bit of everything. And the guy that did the producer management side of things for Sony was actually in the bathroom, and as so happened, Janice says to me, "Oh, Carlyn, Scribs needs some help. Like, can you just help him until he finds a manager?" And I knew that me and Scribs had already connected musically. We liked the same stuff. So then I fell into being Scribs's manager when he was a producer. And then I thought, oh, this is quite good, this management thing, because you get to control the narrative a bit more. So I would do that, and I would A&R at the same time. And then I went on to have a record label with Sony, where I signed Jack James, who I was A&Ring as well. And then it so happened that I ended up managing him. So it went from being everyone's A&R to then managing them. So yeah, fell into it, I guess.
And in the early stages of your careers, both of your careers in management, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Rob, I'll let you go first.
The challenges. It stayed consistent, but I've learned how to mitigate and minimize it, is rejection. I'm not very good at being rejected. I don't like it whatsoever. And I take it very personally. And it's usually because it has not only a kind of like emotional consequence, but it has an economic consequence to it as well. You know, one of the things that you need to support artists is funding. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And so either you fund it yourself to show belief, or just a means to an end. But at certain points, and this is one of the handicaps in modern management, and it hasn't really changed, there's ways you can protect yourself, but lawyers tend not to appreciate it. But, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. If one of my artists needs something and I can't get it from being handcuffed to a relationship, I'm going to do it myself. And so at some point you kind of go, shit, man, I've invested, and I'll share this with you, I've invested up to £30,000 in artists that I believe in. And the only thing that I get in return for that is the opportunity to go and be rejected. You know, there are deals that are done where people sign publishing for £30,000 and get 10 years rights to their music, you know. But the identity of the manager is being a manager, you know. I think it's changing, and it will change, and it's got to change. But I think that when I first started, it was rejection. But it taught me that to ask the questions, why are you rejecting it? Most people were quite like rude and shamefully rude and didn't tell you why. They just ignored you because they didn't enjoy confrontation, and they were moving on to the next thing that they were trying to kind of have on their inquiry list. And it's probably interesting because Carolyn is in A&R would probably be at that end of it, you know, and you'd see how things were like pass, you know. We're a research-driven industry. So you present and it's either a pass or there's a relationship to be had. So what I learned from the rejection is to work out, how to get things so that they are bulletproof and the rejection is not a thing. And you have to learn from the experience about quality control and how to position something that is quality and how to navigate that so that you are protecting a value going forwards, you know, and turn the whole thing from never being rejected into probably rejecting others and turn the table the other way around.
Yeah.
And I've learned that, and I just did not like it. So I've become, I hope, quite good at turning the whole situation like a judo move into rejecting others that come to us, go, can we be your partner? Can we be your partner? And I go, no, you can't.
Yeah. I definitely agree with everything Rob just said. That's been a big part. And then I guess just an additional thing to that for me has been just sometimes the people on the team that you build for your artist, especially if they do sign to a major label, it can be very difficult to have a team where every single person in that team understands your vision and understands what you're trying to do. So one of the challenges I've faced is just people getting in the way of things and delaying things when they really didn't have to do it. And sometimes it was a power play or whatever, but I've definitely found other people just getting in the way of a strong artist and manager vision can be frustrating. And sometimes it does even make you question things, especially if it's someone of like, you know, a very great status and they're very well respected. Sometimes you can think to yourself, oh, is it the right song? Like, am I putting out the right thing? Are we on the right path? And you have to just always be like, no, like, yeah, it's right. We have to just stick to our guns. So yeah, I guess a similar type thing, but yeah, I'd say that people in the way.
And it slows things down, doesn't it, Carolyn? You know,
So much. And it really
because it's a small world and we all survive on reputation as well. And so if you just go around, you know, ignoring people in a kind of, you know, you're not engaging with them or challenging their direction, you become rude manager.
Yeah.
But it's not your fault.
No.
So you have to spend quadruple the amount of energy and time trying to challenge and explain the pathway.
Yeah.
And yet that just slows everything down, you know.
I've had
or you don't want to say no, because another thing, and I'm sure everybody will have come across it, is this industry is run by egos, you know, and there are people who are highly paid egos who have to get their way no matter what, even if it's going to crash the car, that they'll do it. And, you know, if you say yes because they might slow things down or put a stick in the works, as an expression, you know, you'd like not to do it, but sometimes you have to pay lip service to people in a team, and it might just send you on a detour for a week, for a week. But it's a waste of time and it's disorientating. Plus, you have to then almost find a way not to spoil the relationship with the artist. And don't forget, we're all managers and we all have a responsibility to tell our artists how things are. And you try to protect your label and protect your partnerships so that you're not demonizing them all the time. That's a balancing act in its own right, you know, because you don't want to have an us and them conspiratory relationship, because that's counterproductive in an overarching kind of, you know, map work. It just becomes very wonky. And so you're doing so much more energy. I'm just talking to your point, Carolyn, that, you know, there are people in the chain that might not get it, and it just aggravates the whole thing and can send you on an orbital error at times, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely been my pains.
I've learned, and only from experience, trust it's only experience. I don't think there's any school you can go to apart from falling over and making the mistakes, you know. Is that you have to be strong and truthful, you know. And if your artist isn't good enough and you're in a kind of deluded space with that's something else, you know what I mean? Just waving to people who are the managers, actually. that's a whole other thing,
Yeah.
And kind of building off of what you're both saying, managing can be extremely demanding on you as a manager, like mentally, also physically. So how do you balance your personal life and
Great
working
question.
with
Carolyn's
artists?
going to go first with this. I'm going to learn from Carolyn.
I don't have one. That's the truth. And it's really sad to say. I think the other reason as well is because I am A&Ring them, I'm managing them, I'm creative directing them. So I'm definitely doing a lot. I'm literally this year, I had to have like 2 months where I was recovering from burnout. I'm not proud of myself for that, guys. Like, I don't want to obviously have to say that, but I'm just being very honest. It's hard.
Are you on your own, Carolyn?
Yeah. And
I think that's a modern problem.
Yeah. And even like I've got a little dog, and even sometimes like just having the routine with him, I can be like, I've not got time for this. Like, because it's so much. But I think it's probably also more like that for me at the moment, because all of my artists are in a position where they're building and developing and, moving. I would say the last couple months has actually been a bit easier to balance because they've all been in the studio recording. But I just think, if you want to be in management and you want, a couple of artists, not just one, then you have to really be prepared to understand that it's a 24/7 situation.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah.
We're going
Sorry,
to
probably not the
we're going to have
2020 answer I should have been given. Like,
Carolyn, we're going to have an offline conversation of how I can give you some of my best
advice. Yeah.
Not advice, just lessons that I've learned on that, because yeah,
Please.
you can't burn out. It's a dangerous space, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and it is, as a career option, if someone said to you, these are the consequences of what's on the, through that veil of exotic curiosity of management, it is a fucking grubby business.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. All that glitters is not gold. It is like putting your hand up the U-bend of a toilet and getting the shit out, and all that happens is that things get a bit more comfortable and you get a living out of it, It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. It was the question how to get the balance, Dennis.
Yeah, but I think it's important to have a realistic conversation about that, because as well, especially when people are starting out as a manager, there is this image of music industry or management of like it's all super great, but like especially nowadays it's becoming harder to make a living off of management and make a living off of music. So there is like you said, Carolyn, there's like almost no option but to manage multiple artists.
I think Rob might have dropped out for a second.
Yes, I see. Well, we'll continue on. What I wanted to take a little step back, but what do you look for in an artist? And I guess this is also this also applies to you as an A&R. Like how do you approach pitching to work together with someone new?
So I have to really be a fan of essentially the music that they're making and what they're already doing. I mean, I guess that's a really simple and straightforward thing to say.
Thank you for reintroducing me. Sorry about that. It's a telephone call came through. So sorry. From an artist.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, of course, talent is the main thing. And the way everyone I work with as well, they write their own songs. 2 of my clients also produce their own music. So things like that is actually really important to me as well, because I believe that when the artist is creating the songs and writing as well, it's more authentic to what they're actually trying to do and be as an artist. So ideally for me, it's someone that can really understand what they're doing musically. I have to be a fan of their music so that I can see the vision, because I find it very difficult to connect and work with someone if I don't get what they're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's definitely that. And also work ethic is super important, because I think there's a lot of talented people out there, but some people can be quite entitled and just expect everything to be handed
That's
to them
right.
on a plate, because they are so talented. And for me, I'm just like, no, like I'm doing enough work rather than, you know, coming in and doing that side. So I need to see that they have real drive and work ethic at it. So
To that point, Carolyn, I was actually having a conversation with my team yesterday because, you know, like um I changed a very deep philosophy that I had, which is, you know, if I'm going to take on a client, it's for better or for worse. It is like a marriage.
yeah.
They are children. You've got to allow them to grow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that you in the modern world, and there has been lots of change in the psyche of an artist since I started. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I first started, it was a matter of life or death, and you had to kind of join in with that reality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you were going to be, you know, you weren't a disciple of the of what of the objective. You know,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, you know, I think you can only find that out actually after a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm taking a new point that, you know, if we're going to sign an artist, I have to do it in two stages in my head. And it's important that how can I describe it? I have to kind of do it like, okay, I love you, I want to get married, I want to bring you into this world, let's go. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, while you're judging me, I'm really judging you to see if we're going to make this work. And
Yeah.
after a year, I'm now feeling quite happy in my heart to go, this isn't working because you just don't have the work ethic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's to do with, unless they're putting in the same uh pound for pound ambition, you know, what's the point?
Yeah. No, 100%.
Just going back to the I got cut off. I'm so sorry. The answer to my balance is that is for me three things. I have a team, and I think it's really important. I tried to do management on my own when I first started, and I found it to be very lonely. And you know, I found myself to be, you know, at times when I'm kind of like, maybe it was in the old days of how executives were, but I'd be trembling sometimes in fear of the way that they were operating and felt very vulnerable, and I just did not like it whatsoever. And so I quickly understood that I don't mind sharing the
Mm.
income and the wealth that you're try and generate. I don't mind sharing that for a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more life.
Yeah.
And I found that to be a very good recipe for me. And, you know, having a family is important, but at the same time, it's tricky because I had to explain to my wife that you're marrying somebody who's married to a music industry, you know, and I think you've got to get that right as well in whatever the partnerships are that you've got, and get those dynamics right in the home. But at the same time, home is a great place to get unconditional love, honesty, and support. You
Mm-hmm.
ain't going to find it in the music industry. It is a fickle place of bullshit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part is get out in the countryside and do some grounding. Fucking get your feet in the water, get yourself to the top of a mountain, swim in the waters, and fucking feel life, because that is reality. That is the absolute God's reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's why I'm
great
grateful for
advice.
Scotland, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So, mate, I mean, go to Scotland. Got to go
Yeah.
wherever the community in this meeting are. Get out into the countryside and breathe in the fresh air. We are in a conscious time. We've
Mm.
been in there for the last 5, 10 years. Stretching, yoga, water, fresh air, all fucking great for us, because the burnout thing is a disaster. And interestingly enough, whilst COVID was a disaster and a very bad thing for the music industry, I fucking loved COVID because I stopped what I was doing and I managed to reset myself. I think I was in danger of burning out.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really real. And I had the exact same situation over COVID where
Yeah.
I had finally some time to actually analyze all the things that I've been doing.
Yeah. And it wasn't, it's not an academic intellectual thing. It was a kind of like a visceral thing, you know.
Yeah.
It was a calling. It was fucking biblical, you know. It's like, I am fucking going to burn up. Whoa, something's happened. God's spoken. Mother Nature, Earth has happened, and she's doing it. By the way, we haven't really learnt our lessons. We've gone back to it really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're addicted to what we do. Probably, I don't know. I am.
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of building teams around yourself and your artists, what roles do you think are most important in that situation?
For me, organization.
Yeah, I think for me, and every manager's different as well. I will say that because, you know, everyone's got, I feel like every manager is a manager, but then they've also got an additional skill in some sense, whether that's like creativity or if it's musical or just like financial, whatever it is. I feel like every manager's always got another.
It's a very good point
to them. So for me, I'm cool on the creative. It's just finding people to help us bring our vision to life. But I think the side of things for me as a team that would really help is just having a solid like business manager for the artist who can handle all of the financials, all of the invoicing, because that's for me becoming a point of please just get this out of my way so that I can focus on what we're actually creatively trying to do. So I think having a really strong accountant or business manager that communicates with you regularly is like super important.
Yeah, agreed.
I think having obviously a lawyer, everyone knows that that's important, but I think having a lawyer that can, one, speak to the client, but also be also the manager's close contact and explain things in a really like simple way, because I think you can speak to some lawyers and they'll break something down to you and it might completely go over your head, because let's be honest, we're not all legally trained. So I think it's having a lawyer that you can actually be on a level with and ask questions and get the right answers so that whatever you're going into next, you can be like, this deal, just let me make sure that I understand what that point means. So yeah, business manager, lawyer. And then if you don't already have a creative in your team or your manager's not, I think it is really important to have that creative person as well to help, that again understands the vision, understands the genre, understands the music that you're trying to release as an artist.
Very true. Yeah.
So that they can put you in the right sessions, because there's also nothing worse as a manager, and I've had this before with my artists, where every session an E&R was putting in for me, my clients, I was just thinking, for fuck's sake, like what an absolute waste of time. Like, did they not get it? And I was trying to be open and not like control everything and be like, you know, so-and-so has put this session in, just go, just see if it's all right. And every time it was just like, for fuck's sake, they do not get us. So it got to the point where I had to speak to that company and be like, I can't use that E&R, like, you know, let me use someone else.
That's the slowing it down thing
there you
again.
go. Yeah.
Not confronting them early, you know, go,
you're useless.
Yeah, exactly.
For this part anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are mine. I don't know about Rob.
I'm becoming more and more understood that we need to become social media makers and content makers as a management company. I think that it's pretty obvious that digital marketing and having an expression in social media communication and building out fans that way is Route 101 of everything to do with music. And you know, if you have to rely on that from a record label, you've got all of those obstacles to get through and all of the frustrations that go with that. Or if you're hiring an independent company, you're one of 20 people on what I think becomes pretty much a kind of like a Google Docs way of working through creativity, and I find that to be as completely off-putting as ever. So, you know, I think to have a kind of almost a creative studio in the house, I think is going to be a really good way forwards for any manager who can afford to do it. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is that if you are going to hire that, or you're signing to a record label, there's some sort of transaction being made. So, you know, maybe there's a world where you do it and you charge it back to the record label and say, I can't do it for free, but this is the means to an end for everybody, but we're gonna have to do it, you know.
Yeah.
Something else I was wondering about, and this again is a question for both of you. How do you help your artists find their voice as an artist? And Rob, you, for example, have been working with Michael Kiwanuka from like early on, and that has been developed into everything that it is now. How do you go about something like that?
It's my USP. You know, it's a very spiritual, dynamic, holy, cosmic experience, you know. And yeah, I mean, it is learning, it's listening, it's challenging, it's asking the confrontational questions, it's being stupidly honest, it's about cutting through and getting to elephant in the room, you know, conversations. I'm a white guy, middle class, Jewish, and I'm dealing with a black young artist pre Black Lives Matter. Sims was in Black Lives Matter, you know. Addie Sullivan, another one of our artists. I don't know if Karen, were you there when we did Addie Sullivan?
Them,
so Addie is his mum is white, his dad is black from Zanzibar. You know, there are so many areas where you've got to get the trust and ability to peel back the real honest values of an artist. That takes patience and close to counseling skill, you know, and a bit of maturity, and that comes from being self-aware and having some constitution of your own and some self-belief. Because if you go in wobbly and you're second guessing yourself all the time, going, I don't want to say the right thing, you're very spineless and flimsy in your approach. So I think you have to be very sturdy and have a constitution that you really believe in. If they don't trust it, fine, you're out. You know what I mean? But if it is sound in its value, then you can go on a journey to explore the real tones of an artist, and encourage them to explore it themselves. It might be tricky, and you might have to kind of catch them as they fall down and hurt themselves, you know. But once you've got that in your frequency, as in you're dialing it into your frequency, not the how many times you do it, but just you're tuned into that, then I hear the values and I know how to protect them, and I do it like a Mossad assassination, you know, a sniper. I just know how to do it, and I've learned to do it, and I will kill people who get in the way. Not that's metaphorical, that, and that's why, you know, if this is being recorded, I don't want that to go out. But you know, I would die for my artists in that regard, you know.
Yeah.
Do you feel you can sense that potential right away when you hear them the first time?
100%.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, you just get a feeling, don't you? It's like I mean, I guess you like, even when
it's love at first sight, is it not, Carolyn? It's like that kind of like it's love at first sight. You've got to then make the marriage work.
Yeah.
But all of the things that I spoke about, that's how to make the marriage work, in my opinion, you know. But it is love at first sight for me, you know.
Yeah, it's like all of my clients that I work with anyway, like the minute I met them or heard what they were doing, it was like they became my muse for the dreams and the
Yeah,
inspirations that I had as a kid growing up. So
yeah, that's right.
an example, I guess, would be like when I first heard Jack and I saw him and what he was about, I was just automatically like, oh my gosh, you could be my usher. Like you're just like all of the things that I love about R&B and you know the guys of R&B and all of that. I just saw everything that I loved in Jack like instantly. So yeah, I think it's like you see them, they become your muse, and then you are able to like just build on that vision and confidence together kind of thing. Sometimes I will say like though sometimes they can know that they're really, really talented and they know what they're trying to do. But sometimes it does take someone else, like a manager, to come in and say to them, like, just give them the confidence within themselves as well of like, you're amazing and you can do this. Like, yes, of course, we're going to bash heads and we're going to be really honest, and you might send me something and I'll tell you that shit because I know you can do better. But I think like giving them the confidence as well, and even them, because I think most of the time artists are very insecure, creatives are very insecure as a whole. So I think as a manager as well, it's your job to give them that confidence and belief in themselves as well, to really make them have their voice and be that person. And I think it only takes one person, it really does, to like give them that. And I think that's what the manager essentially does.
Well, I think it's some managers, Carolyn, because I know a lot of managers that don't even understand what that concept is, you know.
Yeah, those ones.
Going back to what you said, Carolyn, kind of like about, you know, your own dreams, and your vision. How do you find a balance between what your vision for an artist is and their own vision? Like you said, a lot of times you meet an artist, they're very talented, they know they're talented, and they have a very strong vision of what they think they should be doing, but it's not always what they really should be doing.
Yeah.
How do you convince them otherwise?
I think it's for me and my clients, I can't speak about everyone, but I think for me and my clients, it's definitely like a trust thing, essentially, because in the beginning, you know, like everything that I'd potentially like lay out for them, or the plan that we would talk about, each time that we got those little nods and things that happened, and it made them feel like, oh, yeah, she's right, we're on the right path. Like it's became that thing where they really, really trusted. And by the way, I'm not to say that I'm always right either, but they really trusted that, okay, if they might have something in their mind and it's just a bit, you know, it's a bit too extreme, it's a bit too far ahead of things. So it's just like pulling them back a bit and being like, no, we'll get there, but we have to do before we get to that. So I think it's like breaking down a process. If it's something that's maybe a bit extravagant that you do want to get to as well. But I think if it's something that's just completely left and you're thinking, huh, this doesn't align, like this doesn't match. Like I think you have to really sit down and understand why the artist is saying what they're saying. And then I guess just explain to them why you don't really think that makes sense. And that's when you butt heads with artists sometimes, I think. That's when you have your debates and they go in the huff with you for a few days and then you're friends again. But I think it's like the thing that gets you through that is just having like the strong trust that whatever you've told the artist or the producer, whatever it is that you're creative that you're trying to get to goal wise, as long as you have had little niche moments where that's happened, I think they do usually, and in my case, like it says, they do really trust what you're saying, and take the L. And there's also the times where like they've wanted to drop a song. I've had this in the past and I've been like, no, this song is shit, we can't drop this song, honestly, it's not it. And they've kept pushing and pushing. I'm like, all right, cool, do it then. And then they do it and the song goes left. So I think little moments like that, they're like, oh shit, right, okay, I probably should have listened. So I think it's a process. I don't think it's a one instant thing. I think it's a process and a building of trust.
I've forgotten even what the question was.
Sorry, I'm just
The question was, how do you balance your vision and
Oh,
artistry?
yeah. I'm going to give it to you in a kind of metaphor and poetry way. I think it's like doing a tango, and you've got to do a dance, and if you're present and, you know, fluid and supple in that moment, you're just moving with them, and you're fluid, and you're leading for 1 second, and then you're following another second, then you're leading 1 second. You know, if you come from the Simon Fuller, Simon Cowell, you know, architecturals type entrepreneur manager, it's certainly something I don't do. You know, I support and guide and protect real artists, diamonds, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to present them with a vision, although very, very quickly, when you share all of your creative touch points, when you're dating and working out whether or not you can work with each other, you probably start sharing a bit of an architectural shared plan at that point, by go, yeah. And it's a given through the ongoing conversation. And I think you have to it's like sailing. It takes a team, but you've got to get up early in the morning and work out what the weather conditions are and read the shipping forecast so that you can help guide. But you got to remember, we are service providers, managers, but have this kind of very strange role where you're supposed to be a leader and almost a boss, but we're actually service providers. And it's a very strange dynamic. So I think that I just go to the fact that you just got to do a dance all the time, you know, and follow and go with it, you know.
Yeah. Before we go to a Q&A, and everybody who's with us, you can drop questions in the chat. The last question I wanted to ask is, are there any developments or trends? And Rob, you kind of spoke to that, with going independent instead of signing with labels. Are there any developments or trends you're excited about that are happening now in the music industry, or are close to?
Absolutely. I think that there is becoming more of a what's the word? There's becoming a trend and a value in being absolutely honest, unsophisticated, not overcooked, not over-egged, not over-designed, quite rough, quite organic. And instead of everybody telling you it has to be polished and squeaky clean and shiny presentable to go to market, bullshit. I think things can be as bedroom and as organic and as unsophisticated as they could ever be. That's a trend. It might change, and there might be a counter to that, because everybody might get tired with things being a bit DIY. But at the minute, you can actually get scale by running a business from your mobile phone.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Anything?
And I love that. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I agree with what Rob said as well. I think something that I'm excited about is I think for a minute, especially in black music, actually, the record labels didn't really give any proper time, nurture, and development when it came to black music. I think they jumped on it quite late when it was starting to make money, signed a bunch of stuff they probably shouldn't have signed because it was one-hit wonders, spent a lot of money on deals, and are realizing now that wasn't probably the smartest thing to do. And I think there's been a few, I'm not going to say none because that's not true, but there's very few record labels that have invested in artists culturally early on to help really nurture and push forward real artist development to really bring forward our superstars of the next generation. So the thing that I'm super excited about is all of the managers that I'm around, especially in the R&B space, a lot of them have had to develop, nurture, and figure it out themselves, kind of thing. So I believe that the power is really becoming that of the managers and the artists now, and I think that's why it's so great to see artists that are choosing the distribution route. Because they've done a lot of the development themselves and they're realizing more and more, I don't need to sign all this away. I don't need to do all of these rights because actually we've had to culturally develop everything in-house ourselves. And it's getting to a point where, I feel like the power is becoming more and more in the hands of the artist manager.
I don't know this for fact. And so please don't take this as a kind of like a well-researched ideology. But from my experience, to talk to your point, Carolyn, that the support hasn't been there, I'm sure that in the communities, the less privileged communities, is that there's been a inspirational leadership advice of back yourself, go and get it, be good, be strong, and be undeniable, but back yourself, and that's where and it's misunderstood. It's not arrogance. It's actually, it's not arrogance. It's actually a practical, pragmatic solution to not having a conduit that has been a privilege to a lot of people in the music industry for far too many years. And on top of that, the way that the legacies are written in biographies about the terms and the deals that were done, accelerates that kind of and amplifies that philosophy. And so, it's not an attitude. It's a bloody state of mind that is so important. And I say that again, I'm a white guy, and I don't even want to start an endless debate of anything. But that's what I've observed, and the empathy that I have to the concept.
Yeah.
We have a few questions in the chat.
Denise I see my name popping up, and I can't read the questions. So if you can help me there, that'd be great.
Denise asked you, can you elaborate on the attributes and qualities that make an artist what you consider to be diamond quality?
100% I can. And again, we live in a very subjective industry, and my version of diamond is not what anybody else's version of a diamond is. But here's my understanding. A diamond has got incredible value. They're very rare. When you find one, you've got to understand and look at it and kind of know what it is. It then has to go to Antwerp, Geneva, Tel Aviv, and New York to get cut and presented. So it takes a team to get it to its absolute most impeccable presentation. So if you follow that back to somebody who can see the diamond, that's kind of like close to the source, to the artist in a parallel world. How do you determine that? It goes back to my thing about rejection, and you keep on refining and asking the questions as, why are you rejecting my artist? And they go, well, because there is the lyrics are a bit too congested. The melody is wonky. The flow is not great. Those beats are tired. People have been doing that forever. They're copycat. Whatever, right? There are many ways to inform why your stone might be flawed. By the way, emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and all other precious stones, they're very precious, but they're not diamonds. A diamond will always find its way to market with the highest value. Others might be put over here and kind of, oh, I'm not that bothered about that, you know. The way that it forms me is that I love music, and I've been listening to music since I was a child, you know, and every record that I've fallen in love with, just for me, are ones that have got like they're the important records. And let's say that there are 1,000 very, very important records ever made. Every one of them will inform you as to what the quality of a diamond is, whether it's hip hop, soul, reggae, rap, classical, jazz, or fucking folk. That's how I have managed to work out what a diamond is.
Thanks.
And also
Yeah,
in film as well. I do it in film, and I do it in books, and I do it in
nice.
paintings.
There you go.
So,
They're all the greatest, aren't they? The greatest of the greatest. You know what I mean?
so do you feel that you're kind of looking for, like you said, like you've been listening to music since you're a child? Do you look for that feeling?
Does it resemble that experience? And if it does, I fucking lose my shit.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
When I first heard Michael Kiwanuka, I thought I was listening to, honestly, Curtis Mayfield and Marvin Gaye. And I went, and this answers Carolyn's point about the dreams. It kind of, it plays into, we should all be dreamers, by the way. You've got to dare to dream constantly. It might be the most immature bit of advice because it's not practical. But when you find something that kind of fulfills that, but you're doing it based on the study and the resource and passion of being a fan of music and or art and the greatest masterpieces in that, and something resembles it, you kind of go back to these philosophies that I would have learned when I was kind of turning on in life, going, well, you can't reinvent a wheel. A wheel is a wheel. You know what I mean? You can't reinvent red wine. Red wine is red wine, but there's fucking top quality red wine and there's shit red wine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone has a follow-up question actually. What's the first Diamond album that comes to mind and one that you heard recently?
Oh, very good question. For me personally, oh man, that's a really, really good question. In indie music, it's DC Fontaine's. In hip hop, it would probably be Little Sims that I worked with, you know.
So good.
Because the rest of hip hop for me is from an older generation. I don't hear anything in grime or, you know, I just don't.
Connect.
I just don't think it's amazing. I understand it and I can get it, but I don't think it's classic. I don't think it's a diamond.
Another question from the chat. What could be the best way to pitch an artist for a grant? Like what could be the key aspects that grant providers are looking for?
Don't Carol, I've been talking shit for
a grant. I think it's the shiny stuff, I think, that talks a lot on these kind of grant things. Where, and even just like making the polls and numbers, it's like just making your pitch as shiny as possible, essentially. And if it's something brand new, then I would say as a manager, you should really try and lay out your vision, structure, like what your plan is with the artist, just so that they can see it and they can understand it if it's a brand new artist, for example, and hear it and see it to see it all aligns. I think it's just being really constructive with the language that you use as well, and just being very straight to the point and trying to add all of those highlights that, you know, whether it's like Spotify, put them in this playlist or whatever it is, like just so that they can see that those nuggets are starting to happen and that there's a real plan and vision for them. I guess that's what I would do.
And then the last question from the chat before we go into breakout rooms. What's the best way to generate an opportunity for your artist without an amazing network?
Make an amazing song.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it's about like just having the product that you are sharing with the world, just whether that's your music or like your creative, your socials, whatever it is that just aligns with artists, just making sure that it's as great as you can get it to be, and people will come, I guess, because there's a lot of managers that start out brand new. They've never actually been in the industry, they've not got any contacts and things like that, but you know, if their artist is making well-respected music and catching the right ears and eyes, then I think that brings so much opportunity.
I'll tell you an interesting anecdote that that talks to that, and it goes back to diamonds, and it goes back to not doing copying. You know, I don't know if this is a controversial shout, but you know, there is only one Coca-Cola, and everything else, like, you know, Pepsi, in my opinion, is second rate. You know, on all of the other supermarket colas and the copycat colas, they're not Coca-Cola, you know. And so you should never parody and copy what others are doing. It shouldn't be a version of what somebody else is doing, right? Because the people who are there to support, invest, and amplify careers are looking for something unique and have a point of difference, so that you can kind of not get confused in somebody else's lane, as you might hear, but you have your own lane. And I think that's really important. I think if you try and fit into somebody else's lane, it's destined for failure. I think, but here's the thing that clarifies what Carolyn was talking about. That where my company is at is that we often get introduced to artists who have released music, and it seems to have kind of caught the imagination from the music industry, and they're getting courted by a lot of people. And the first thing that they need to do is get a lawyer. They should get a lawyer. But the second thing they should do is get a manager. But the manager is coming to it from somebody who's released music, and it's found its way to an industry, you know. And that gives me a great deal of confidence that you can drop a very, very well presented piece of music into the world. Yes, you should try and put some wind behind it and use some kind of standard techniques to put some engine and fuel behind it, right? In social media, and try and send it to bloggers, early day influencers. But just drop it and keep on dropping music, because if it's good, it will find people, because it finds me as a manager. New artists find me, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a really great conversation. To everybody in this Zoom, we're gonna go into breakout rooms now.